The evening air in California was alive with the hum of traffic, laughter, and music spilling from the Grand Hotel's lounge. Guests in polished shoes and glittering dresses moved in and out of the revolving glass doors, carrying an air of luxury and ease. Just outside those doors, however, stood a boy who seemed to belong to another world entirely. Barefoot, his clothes torn and hanging loose, he held onto an old, battered guitar as if it were his only possession of value. The instrument had scratches etched into its wood, the strings worn thin, yet his small fingers clutched it with determination. He strummed a shaky chord, his hands trembling not just from nerves but from hunger. Most passers-by didn't notice him. Their eyes skimmed over his fragile frame as if he were invisible, just another shadow on the sidewalk. Still, the boy's gaze carried something rare, an ache, but also an unshaken spark of hope, as if music could bridge the distance between his world and theirs. Then, as the flow of people continued, a tourist paused. Drawn by curiosity, the stranger turned back toward the boy. The child lifted the guitar, and with a breath that carried the weight of his young soul, he began to sing. The haunting notes of Hotel California spilled into the night air, soft at first, then steady, each lyric echoing with a depth far beyond his years. For the first time that evening, time seemed to slow, and the boy's voice demanded to be heard. The boy's voice rose above the noise of the street, carrying a raw beauty that seemed almost impossible for someone so young. It wasn't polished or trained, but it was pure in a way that pierced straight into the hearts of those who happened to hear it. The haunting melody of Hotel California floated through the hotel's front steps, blending with the night air and silencing the chatter of those nearby. People who had walked by moments before without a second thought now turned their heads, curiosity pulling them back. A couple stopped mid-conversation, a valet froze with car keys in hand, and even the hotel staff peeked out from the glowing lobby to see where the voice was coming from. The boy stood there, eyes closed, strumming the tired guitar as though it was alive, his small frame trembling with both nerves and passion. His voice carried not just words, but emotions, loneliness, longing, and a deep yearning that made strangers feel as though they were hearing their own hidden sorrows sung back to them. One by one, a crowd began to form. Phones were raised, recording the unexpected performance. For a moment, the glitz and glamour of the hotel faded, and all that mattered was the sound of a boy who had nothing, giving everything he had through his song. The air grew still, and it seemed as if the world had stopped to listen to him, a forgotten child finally seen through the power of his voice. When the last note faded into the night, the crowd erupted in applause that startled the boy. He lowered his guitar, his eyes wide as if he wasn't sure whether to believe the clapping was really for him. Among the people who had gathered, one kind stranger stepped forward and gently asked, "Where did you learn to sing like that?" The boy hesitated, his gaze dropping to the cracked pavement beneath his feet. His voice, softer now, carried a truth far heavier than his small shoulders should bear. He explained that his father used to play the guitar and sing to him every night before bed. It was his father who first taught him the chords, his father who filled their little home with music. But when illness claimed his father's life, the music stopped, except in the boy's heart. Since then, he had clung to the guitar as his only reminder, practicing every day, even when his stomach growled with hunger. Singing wasn't just a dream, it was a way to feel close to his father again, a way to keep him alive. He confessed quietly that he didn't want fame or fortune, only to share his voice so the world would never forget the love that was once sung to him. The crowd listened in silence, many with tears in their eyes. In that moment, the boy's story transformed him from a street performer into something far greater, a child carrying the memory of his father in every note he sang. The silence after his words hung heavy in the air, and then something remarkable happened. A woman in the crowd took off her hat and gently placed it on the ground before him. Without a word, she dropped a bill inside. Soon, others followed, some placing money, some leaving notes of encouragement, and others simply bowing their heads with respect. But the generosity didn't end there. One man stepped forward, introducing himself as the hotel's lounge manager. He looked at the boy's trembling hands, still clutching the guitar, and said, "How would you like to sing on a real stage tonight?" The boy's eyes widened, disbelief flashing across his face. Before he could answer, the crowd erupted in supportive cheers, urging him on. That evening, the boy stood under warm lights inside the Grand Hotel, a place he had only ever seen from the outside. His ragged clothes seemed out of place against the polished floor and sparkling chandeliers, but when he lifted his guitar and began to sing Hotel California once more, nothing else mattered. The audience, filled with strangers who had once overlooked him, now leaned in, captivated. His voice carried through the room, trembling at first, then soaring with newfound strength, filling every corner with the memory of his father's love. Some wiped tears from their eyes, others clasped hands as if holding on to the moment itself. What began as a boy's song on the sidewalk had turned into a performance that would never be forgotten. In the days that followed, the boy's life changed in ways he could never have imagined. The video of his street performance, captured on countless phones that night, spread across social media like wildfire. Within hours, millions had heard his voice, and messages poured in from every corner of the world. People wrote about how his singing reminded them of loved ones they had lost, how his raw emotion had healed something inside them. News outlets picked up the story, calling him the boy whose voice carries the soul of Hotel California. For the first time, he wasn't invisible, he was seen, heard, and cherished. The hotel invited him back to perform regularly, and each time he stepped onto that stage, he sang not for fame or applause, but for the memory of his father. His small frame no longer trembled with fear, instead, it stood tall with quiet pride. One night, after a performance that ended with a standing ovation, the boy walked outside, guitar in hand, and looked up at the starlit California sky. With tears glistening in his eyes, he whispered softly, "This one's for you, Dad." In that moment, it didn't matter how many millions knew his name, what mattered was that his father's love lived on through every note he sang. His voice had begun outside a hotel's door, but now it echoed in the hearts of people across the world, a reminder that even the smallest spark of hope can light up endless lives.